Ooh, I just started the recording part of it. Okay, cool. So thank you again so much for being here and joining me. And I first, I guess, want to see if you guys had any questions for me about like how this will proceed and like kind of the goal, I guess, or like the mission or the background behind it.
We've done this before, so we take that you know what you're doing.
Cool.
So I don't have any question. I can't speak for my wife.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to say that what you're doing makes a big difference.
I hope it makes a big difference in a good way.
Well, I think it's the cleanest way I've seen so far, and I'm 77.
Thank you. Okay.
And I used to work with patients in the hospital who were on drugs, and to them it was medicine. To you and I, it was drugs.
Yeah, I guess it can be both.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But to them, it's medicine. I only took this to make me feel better. I only took this because I was hurting so bad.
Yeah. What kind of hospital like capacity was that?
It was Park, do you remember Parkside? Or are you too young for Parkside?
No.
Over on
Is it indicator?
yeah,
Ridgeview?
no, Ridgeview. You know
Okay.
where Ridgeview is?
No, I haven't been in Atlanta for that long, honestly.
Okay, Ridgeview is the big psych hospital.
Okay.
Takes all the high-paying people, so they stay there for a long time. And the Parkside was a small place closer to the center of Atlanta. Ridgeview was outside the 285 circle.
Okay, cool. And you worked there for a time?
I didn't work there. I was a psychologist, and I worked out of there. I brought patients there.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, cool.
But now I'm a shaman.
Yeah, so tell me what that like transition was like. You were a psychologist before you were a shaman?
Yes.
Okay. And what was that like? Like what kind of psychology had you been practicing and how did that like spark?
I've been studying shamanism since the mid 80s, even earlier than that, but I've been studying shamanism. And I saw that the shaman himself or herself was seen as the psychologist of the tribe, the priest of the tribe, and the healer helper of the tribe. Those were the three roles the shamans played in most shamanic tribes. If you go to Hawaii today, the same tribe that's existed in Hawaii is still there, but up until 1918, they quit eating people because they were cannibalist shaman and cannibalist tribe. So that's the kind of diversity you have among tribe. And you could get another shaman in, besides my wife, who I love dearly, sit and say the exact opposite things to me, and they believe that. I don't believe that. We have a very different way of viewing shamanism than some of the people you hear today who want the best way to get there is to get there on ayahuasca and you can get right to the body of the Great Spirit and you can see everything. That's BS. And I've done ayahuasca.
Yeah. How much of, I have so many questions, but I guess how much of your like perspective on shamanism is around like the herbal plants that kind of like or the plants
How much of our perspective is?
Yeah.
What did you say?
Well, I believe that we, in terms of International School of Shamanism and myself personally, and I know it's a shared belief we have, that nature is a healer and that everything is conscious and there can be medicine in sacred plant helpers. And we do regard plant helpers as sacred and a very potent and powerful medicine.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, it's one of the braid. It's interwoven with integration, with discipline, with practice, with healing. I believe the medicine can be very healing but then it's my responsibility to integrate that into a practical daily approach. I do think that it is something that should be approached with great reverence and respect, because there is a consciousness in those plants. And it to me is seeing that as consciousness rather than something I'm using.
Yeah.
It's like, for example, giving respect to that plant helper, really anything in nature. It can be as simple as like, before I go and pluck this flower, realize that is consciousness. And maybe I want it on my table, and that's fine. Hear me, I'm not saying not to do that, but to have respect for that. Asking. There are times, sometimes things don't want to be moved, but it's respect. You know, that was a pretty simple example, but it is respect. Respect for the sacredness, and also respect for the medicine, and that powerful medicine, and preparing ourselves for that. I believe there's a whole practice when we use plant helpers, seeing it as sacred. And what we teach at International School of Shamanism is 4 fundamental things with everything, but particularly with plant helpers, and that is intention. What is truly my intention? And another way of viewing intention is it's where I'm going to focus my attention. What is my intention? Let me purify that intention, not from a moral or puritanical perspective, but from the perspective of, let me distill this down to what is the core. Purify it so it's for the highest good. And protection, again, not in a fearful, superstitious way, but creating like almost like a filter, that the only energies that come into this space to me are the energies that go out from me, even with a plant helper, or for the highest good. And then grounding. That's what I was talking about with the integration. I can have the most wonderful healing experience with anything, meditation, a plant helper, a conversation with you, a traumatic experience that I heal. And I need to ground that. Grounding means like I bring this in, I integrate it, I walk it. Because if it's just sensationalized and out there, then how's that helping me to implement this into my life, particularly with addiction? So that's kind of my hour of the schools, from my perspective, how we view that.
Yeah.
You just got a topical view of the first course in shamanism.
Yeah.
And that's what we do, because we want to break the bubble. More people call us to take ayahuasca, 100 times more than to work spiritual work in the school.
Yeah.
We believe that if you want to take a plant helper, then you got to show us that you can get there without a plant helper first. That's a big difference in culture. And that's a change from the old shamanism to today's shamanism of 2022. So it's not that they were wrong. It fit them for that period of time. For us, we've moved up the intellectual ladder. We've also had more skills and more folks out there to help us. So we don't need to do that. In fact, we haven't used a plant helper in 12 years. In 12 years. So it never wasn't like we did it every week. When we offered that service, first of all, you only could be invited to it. It was not sent out there as a public invitation. I mean, a personal invitation you had to have. Secondly, you pray and fast the day before. Mm-hmm. So you burn in the intention. It's not, I just want to go out and get high and tell everybody I've been on ayahuasca. And thirdly, when you come out of it, you should see a change. Because when you pray and work on yourself spiritually, you will see a change.
Yeah. The integration back into your life afterwards, I think, has to, just like a therapy session. I mean, again, I have like so many questions, and this conversation could go in so many different directions. But I guess I'm interested in what you said now is funny, like how now you get like so many more calls like just about ayahuasca than about like shamanism itself. And it's like, well, the purpose behind you taking this plant medicine, like usually should be explained. I feel like first, like in any capacity, you should explain, your reasoning for like not just ayahuasca, but any plant medicine or any healer, any therapy session, like make that clear, make your intention, there. And what kind of scares me about the current like psychedelic renaissance is that it's getting very much this like fad approach, I think, that's like, oh yeah, like mushrooms can cure everything, like anything you have they can cure. And it's like, okay, well maybe, but also like therapy can cure anything, you know what I mean? And like it's not just the teachers are too powerful, like to have that could be taken advantage of like that, I think. And it just kind of, I don't know if worries me is the right word, or kind of like makes me sad, or just makes me wonder what it's going to be like. But just the whole like fadness that psychedelics are going to be having, that are having now and are going to be having more in the future, is like very real. And how do we like medicalize it, you know what I mean? Like the way that we've medicalized everything else with like fad treatments for things, how do we shift from that perspective of thinking like, oh, well, this will cure my life, that's why I'm getting into it, to like actually respecting all the different aspects of the teachers themselves, like where they came from, the earth, the tribes that have used them indigenously for generations, just like a basic understanding of even like the neurology behind it, how it works on your brain, like you would if you were prescribed like an SSRI. So it's really cool to see how it'll, I guess, all transpire, but also kind of personally makes me kind of, I don't trust the medical system that we currently have. And with something like these plant medicines that are so sacred and need to be respected, not just the medicines themselves and the place that they grew from, but the people that have used them for thousands of years, they need to be respected actively as well. And I guess like through having these conversations is how we'll see how that all like happens. But I guess like now, if I were to call you and say, like, you can hear me, I'm guessing, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Like if I were to call you right now and be like, hi, I saw your website on the International School of Shamanism. I am really interested in like doing a course with you. I'm interested in plant medicine, but that's not my main focus. Like, where would that conversation go, I guess?
It usually goes like this.
Haley, your bridge. You can be, like you said, it concerns you, it worries you, what things like that can happen. So you have that vision, and you also have the heart, and you can be a bridge. You know the language of both worlds, and you can be a change maker and a bridge to, I believe it boils down to one word, and that's education. Education. And even if somebody comes into it wanting plant helpers, if that's what gets them to take that step to start, they can make another turn. It's like, it's not like forbidding it. It's just proceeding with education and what's the intention. And I think equally important is in the hands of an experienced guide that knows what they're doing, because as you know, what that can evoke and what can happen in our brains, it really needs someone who has the experience to know how to lead someone. And definitely if someone is leading someone, that they themselves are not, our belief is not ingesting that. Because how can I lead you if I'm on my own trip, so to speak?
Definitely. I used to take people to Peru for a workshop. It would last a week.
Mm-hmm.
And while we were there, we would have ayahuasca twice. And it's just available. Doesn't mean you had to take it. And everybody that was invited already showed signs that they had get to their spirituality without it. One of the participants in that workshop was area control.
Air traffic control.
Air traffic control.
Okay.
I had some neural damage from my body, so I forget sometimes.
Yeah.
And he was a really straight guy. And he said to me on the plane, he said, I'm not coming here to use drugs. I'm just coming here to see Peru. And I said to him, whatever you want, brother, that's your decision. And you know how I feel about it. And I don't take drugs. Anytime I lead, my responsibility is for the life of every person in that room. We do not take drugs when we're leading.
Yeah. Holding the space.
And he came, and then on the first day for doing ayahuasca, which this company sets up for you when you get there. So you know you get it, you know the purity of it. And he came to me the day of the thing, and he said, can I watch? And I said, sure, you can watch. You don't have to take it, even when they pass around. They hand it to you, you hand it right back to them, which was me. I was handing it, so he would hand it back to me. He took it. Surprisingly to me, he took it, and I waited. Usually there's about an 8-hour lapse in time from when we drink a 16-ounce glass of it, and you drink it, you wait about 10 minutes, then you heave into a bucket.
Yeah.
That happened. And then the energy of the ayahuasca starts working on your body. And I noticed he's got tears running down his face. So I just waited to see if it was a passing thing. He saw something, and it just got worse. His shirt was even getting wet. So I went over and sat with him, put my arm around him. He sat with his head on my shoulder till my shirt was soaking wet. And by that time, it was the end of the session. And so I usually walk them in a group and drop one off at one room. So everybody gets to their bedroom and lay down. Mm-hmm. And he laid down, and that's at about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning. And then I hold a session in the workshop. It doesn't start till 4 o'clock that day. And the people who didn't do ayahuasca got to go shopping. They didn't want to sit there. And out he comes, all dressed up in his khaki pants, starch with the seam on it, his white shirt, button open, but buttoned down on the side. And I said to him, I says, how you feeling? He said, I told you nothing would happen to me. I didn't feel anything. That is the power of the mind. To enunciate that even deeper, I had a Japanese lady come to me when I was in private practice, and she was afraid to tell her husband she was pregnant because he didn't want a baby and she so badly wanted one. And she looked like she's pregnant. I mean, it would be very obvious. She was a tiny little woman and she had a belly that came out. And in Georgia and HICFA, if they have something like that, and you're seeing them for neurological thing, you have to have her notify her gynecologist, and then I could speak with him, and he notified the gynecologist that I wanted to talk to him, and I'm talking to him, and I said, do you have permission? Did she sign a paper in your office that you can communicate with me? And he said, yes, that's how I got your phone number. Went on, long story short, she was not pregnant. Her husband didn't want to have a baby, but she wanted to have a baby so bad, she grew a belly and she lactated. And you can look that up in the books because there are many cases of that. That's not a surprise. Yeah. And I see a lot of people who are looking for that one pill to put them on happy street. And a lot of these powerful drugs like ayahuasca, peyote, mushroom, a lot of them can mess your head up. If you take somebody with a mental disorder, not a major one, they're still an equal partner in society, but they have that, they could come out of there and do this and not move, not say anything, and you hit a wall. You hit something real painful in that, and the pill didn't take it away. And you put so much weight on that pill, and especially the ones out with CMT, DMT, which is artificial ayahuasca. There's side effects of that pill. And there's others, but my whole point in telling you that, us telling you that, is we teach the spiritual side, and we teach the spiritual side as of 2022. We may go back in history and say, we learned this from there, but those people who did that, they didn't learn it from people 1,000 years ago. It was passed down tribe by tribe because that was their only newspaper. They passed that down by verbiage. Usually if she's the shaman and I'm her son, I would become a shaman.
Like a family lineage kind of thing from healer to healer. So when you became one, then how did you learn how to? And I'm assuming you became a shaman before you started ISS.
Yes. Well, by teachers, you go ahead. You learned it from me. I don't want to.
You know, it's funny you say that because we can give sort of looking at so much power to like a spiritual leader is but even after being a shaman,
definitely too much.
She was anointed by her husband.
Okay.
I didn't hear what you said. Hey.
Oh no, I just meant you said sometimes we can give like so much power to like a spiritual leader or like a spiritual guide and just
President, teachers.
Sorry?
And we give more power to presidents, we give more power to teachers.
Yeah.
It's a laziness. We let that go instead of saying, well, you want to be a spiritual teacher? Tell me what you've done. Tell me how you feel you're qualified to teach. I've never had a student ask me that. Not when they first started.
Yeah.
After I teach them the course on asking, then they all ask, but before that.
So Lisa, I think you were going to say, go ahead.
Not a person that I work with. There's not a workshop that we do that I do not learn more. So it's an ongoing process. But for me, the path to shamanism was pain. With trauma was when I was in my, I'd say, 30s. And I went through a divorce, and it was like seeking somewhere for healing this pain. And it was pain from way before divorce. It was pain from my early life experiences, from dealing with my own addictions as a 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old, trying to not feel the pain. So my path to shamanism was definitely from my own healing. And the shamanism we teach, there's a place for ceremonialists, there's a place for the theory of shamanism, all that. But the shamanism that has made the most difference in my life was to go in here to those deep, dark, painful places and heal. So my path to shamanism is through my own pain, through my own addictions, through, not knowing a better way.
Yeah.
And like I said, even today, there's not a workshop, there's not a circle, there's not a client that I work with, that there's not this mirror. And hopefully, it's kind of like divorce. You can know about divorce, you can know about addiction, but unless you've been divorced, unless you've been addicted, you don't really know. You can empathize, but you don't know. So I believe in my own experience, I might not know what someone else's form of addiction is, like what it's like for them, but I can relate. And as a shaman, that I hope those life experiences I've had, that I can connect with someone, make a difference for them. They do for me.
Yeah.
So my path was basically finding everything that didn't work first, and seeking. And then when I found shamanism, believe it or not, I had a friend that was like, hey, Peru to do ayahuasca, go with me. And I'm like, big snakes there? Like, I'm not going where there are big snakes. And actually now I really know that could have been dangerous for me because of the damaging for me. So I didn't go, but it was through that experience that I found shamanism. He was like, well, will you go to see this shaman? It was in Florida. A Peruvian shaman came to Florida. And I went, and the first experience I had was we did a shamanic journey. And when we did that journey, and going on a shamanic journey is like a form of meditation, but it's a journey. You have an intention. There's something you go to see, know, find out, ask for help with, release. And in that shamanic journey, I'm like, I'm home. This is what I've been looking for. This feels right. And that was my approach to shamanism. And then studying it for years, we met through our similar interest in shamanism. We began teaching together after we were married 15 years ago. So that's my path to shamanism.
Wow.
My path to shamanism is a little different. I came out of a war, and I was complaining to one of the people I was in college with, who was also a veteran. And he said, there's this workshop coming up. And he said, I've heard a lot of good talking about it, so you ought to try and take it. It's supposed to heal the inner spirit or something like that. He didn't know exactly what it did. And I went, and there was this, in the north, the
tribals,
yeah, what do you call it? The reservations are all where they've always been, because the northern Indians fought with the people trying to free the United States into the free country. So that's where they always been. And so you go up there, and I went on the reservation right outside of Buffalo, New York, and I did a weekend with the shaman. And the medicine, and that didn't ring with me, but he got out of me during the session that we did. You always have a small group because you do a lot with each person, and that's what he did. And I was raped when I was 7 years old. I was raped by a man. And that's the first time I told somebody.
Wow.
And I just cried and cried and cried. And when I left, I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel like I connected with anybody or anything. And I never went back. But it wasn't any of them. It was me and my own emotional pain, and have to face it again because I had pushed it down so deep. So that was my lesson coming out of that. And the other thing he did was, when you set up your mesa, it's an altar, and it's supposed to be your personal altar. And this shaman says, you got to put this here, and you got to put this here, and you got to put that. I said, if it's my own personal mesa, why can't I set it up the way I want? And I said to him jokingly, if I ever teach shamanism, I'm going to let them set it the way they want, because that's the way it should be. It's all about creating your path. And if I set it up the way you want it, I'm not creating my path, I'm creating part of your path.
What is the mesa?
We talk.
What is the mesa that you set up? The mesa.
Oh, mesa.
Yeah.
Mesa is a Spanish word for table.
Mm-hmm.
But what it is, we can't take yours out. What it is, well, someday we'll have it set out so you can see it. You come over and visit us. We have mesas, 3 of them in here.
Cool.
So mesa is considered sacred. You call it the table of sacred because it's got your candles, your whatever you want to put out there to match the 4 directions, and then different things that you're working on. Only you will know what it is because you design what goes where and there.
Okay.
It's
And
like privacy. You want to keep that between Great Spirit and that person.
Sort
Cool.
of like a sacred space for your reflection.
yeah, like your what's like shrine kind of
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
for study. And that's private. That's nobody else can see it, or
Oh, they can see it. They shouldn't touch it without your permission, just like your body is sacred and shouldn't be touched without. And that's the way it is. Most people, little kids do not know that. So when you have little kids around your mesa, say, oh, look at this, and grab half of the stuff in 2 hands. we've had that happen before.
Wow. So now with the ISS, how is it work? Have your ways of teaching like evolved? How have they changed over the past 15 years or so? Is it more now like the spiritual course that part is necessary in order to become a shaman?
So can I back up first?
Please.
We teach from the minute you connect with us, just talking to each other. We teach this is all about you, and you can fix it with the help of Great Spirit. So if they tell me they believe in taking ayahuasca, whenever they want to, I tell them that the International School of Shamanism is not a school for you, because I don't believe in that, nor would I ever he would be probably the last person I ever let do it. And the shaman over here, she ran the school pretty much for the last 4 years. She's only counting one. And she'll tell you about the people who call us and they say, oh, I'm really interested in shaman. And when do you do ayahuasca?
Yeah.
We get 2 calls, that one, then we get this one. I hope you rot in hell for all the people you're taking away from Jesus.
Oh, wow. The Christian.
We got that on the way driving too. Somebody called me, left a message, and that was that. In neither case do I think it's true. I think Jesus was a formidable character in history and did a lot of great things. Otherwise, people wouldn't still be talking about him 2,000 years later. So I don't have any judgment on that.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus himself was a shaman in a way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misconceptions though about the Jesus that like the Christians, so I don't want to say the Christians and group them all and generalize their view of Jesus, but the white Jesus that you see, like, or that is upheld by certain parties, I'll say, is not completely historically or culturally accurate, spiritually accurate at all. But I guess to kind of backtrack a little bit to the school, how does the school run now? Because obviously, like, if you say, if you're looking to do ayahuasca every day, this is not the school for you. I say, okay, great. I'm not looking to do it every day. I'm looking for the spiritual part of it. Like, what does that course look like?
The International School of Shamanism, our core mission is to help people heal with the medicine of unconditional love and acceptance, so that you can see the divinity within you, embrace your gifts. I believe in everything, there is this infinity, 2 sides of every coin. With healing, I believe there comes a responsibility in serving. And serving, the more I serve, the more I will heal. Like I said earlier, I see myself in those people.
Yeah.
So the International School of Shamanism is a place for healing, a practical approach to shamanism, like how you can use this in your day-to-day life. The parts that just make you want to pull your hair out, or the frustrations are people around us. Everything's about relationship. And the way that works, we offer one-on-one sessions. We offer a completely free monthly healing circle, because we want it to be accessible by all people.
By donation only.
Right. So there's a monthly healing circle that we offer that's oftentimes like, it's not in person currently, it is online. We're in these changing times. And we offer a women's circle each month, a medicine wheel journey circle each month. All of these are learning about shamanism as a practical daily practice and path. So that's what we do. We also offer like ceremonies for the equinox, the solstices. That's what we do.
Beautiful.
And we both believe in that the healing happens in a group, because in a group, we all have pieces of the puzzle. We all have our own pain. We all have our own medicine. And when you're talking about your journey or your pain, maybe it's safer for me to see it over there. And I can open up a little more. And it's usually the person that has the courage to be the most vulnerable that opens the door for others. So in relationship, in circle, we can all heal by reflecting on each other. Not only the healing we need, but the medicine we offer. You know, it's like if you and I are together, like for example, right before the Zoom, normally I'm doing the Zooms and I have a light set up a certain way. I'm like, that won't work. And he comes in and simply turns the drum over, sits in the bottom, and it's great. I'm like, oh, I never thought of that. You know, so together we can come up with a much better solution than alone.
It is. I taught the school. I started the school 46 years ago, and I taught alone for all that time until 2005. In 2005, I had a partner, and it changed the whole dynamics of the school. They could relate to me. Now they had to relate to both, and they had to decide how to relate. And it was amazing. 90% of them related to us as equals. And they didn't have to ask me, well, you're just a shaman. Well, he's been, none of that happened. So what I told them and what Lisa just told you was, I tell them that, you know, if you come here and you got this great power, then show me. Because that's the second thing they go, oh, I know I'm a healer, I can do this. And many people walk away and say they've healed their whole life. I said, great, we need somebody like that because we haven't found one. You can come and do that on Saturday at 2 o'clock. They never show up. I never tell the students they're coming because those people don't show up. Those people are just like you and I, only they don't want you to see the deep, dark side of them. And everything I set up to teach in the school comes from a center of you, meaning I'm going to show you my failures. I'm going to show you what happened to me. They all were part of making who I am. That's why we can't practice shamanism from 2,000 years ago, because they didn't practice shamanism from 2,000 years before them. They practiced it from a year. Mainly throughout history, you'll see it's just a year. And then the next person who really ingrates himself into shamanism, and that lasts about a year. That's changing. So what I see with a lot of people in my lifetime in shamanism is, oh, I read back here and so, and this shaman, Don Carlos, what was the one that did all those, the books? Carlos Castaneda. He wrote many books about shamanism, but you can see his own ego change in the book. The first 18 books, I forget, I read all of them. The first 18 or 17 were really deeply spiritual books. And then something happened and he got into Sensimilia, which is another kind of ayahuasca and that. It's from the Sensimilia cactus, and you peel it and the inside is all mush, and you scrape it off in the bowl and add just a wee bit of water, and then you drink it, and it's instant. And that's where he started changing his life. And he started doing that every week. So that's, I hope we answered that question.
Yeah, no, fantastically. And I love the point of, you know, we don't practice shamanism from 2,000 years ago, but it's for today, because there's a difference between like practicing something exactly as it was 2,000 years ago and just acknowledging and respecting that it has existed for that long. It's like, I've been teaching yoga for 6 years or so, and I know that yoga's been around for 4,000, 5,000 years.
Started by a shaman.
Sorry?
It's yoga came from shamanism. Look it up on the internet.
You mean like when it started 5,000 years ago? Yeah, I mean, a lot of spiritual practices definitely came from plants who taught us how to connect with each other. And
their level of intelligence.
Yeah. yeah, they are the teachers. But as a yoga teacher now, I can't, I have to teach yoga for today's like day and age, you know what I mean? So
Exactly.
it's similar
You
at
got
the same time paying respect to the like cultures and generations with which it came from, and just acknowledging it to my students, like, hey, so this has existed for so long. And I think it just adds this like this sense of, this is something that needs to be respected when you talk about how long it's been around for. Not saying that, okay, we're going to practice it as if, today is the year 1622, like it's 2022, but how can we apply, because those lessons are timeless. All of this stuff exists beyond the constraints of time. And so that's, I think, the permanence of it, or the universalness of it, is like the same lessons can be applied from then to now. It's just the expression or the fashion of which is constantly going to be evolving. Would you recommend the books by Carlos Castaneda now still, or?
No.
None of them at all?
Well, only because the last 34 are horrible. The first 18 or 16, I forget, were good. And I wouldn't put somebody in that direction of something that could harm them for their life. You read his stuff. His stuff is still enjoyable to read, but it's not real. It's like one person said to me years ago, that we have to learn shamanism from back 2,000 years because that's real shamanism. I said, then you got to ask yourself, who told you the real shamanism was back then? It has to be somebody that communicates it. And then he said to me, when farmers came here, farmers built their barns just like they did in other places, and they had their animals. I said, that's all they knew. You live in a society now with trillion different cultures and sexual identification, and you name it. It's typically a vegetable soup of people. And so how are you going to talk to them about what farmer's barn was? Look at the barns today. 90% of them are industrialized, they're heated and air conditioned, the poop is automatically taken out and the milk is taken out.
Yeah.
So that's how we talk about that. Sorry, I talked too much.
No, I love that. And I love the it's a vegetable soup. It's so right. I mean, we are all just different kinds
DMT, DDT, you name it, it's in that soup.
Yeah. Let me see. I know I had a bunch of other questions for you. And I want to see where that list is. So we know about how you were founded, Tom, that you started it 46 years ago, after being a practicing psychologist for many years. You were
I was a young practicing psychologist.
A young practicing one, and then you were introduced.
I got out of the military in 62, and excuse me, I went in 62. I got out in 66. And then I told you the story of going to college and meeting that Indian who taught me. And then 7 years later, I went to Peru. And that was an eye-opener for me. I've been to Peru a number of times since then, and it was nothing like the first time. The first time I was like a kid in a candy store, and I didn't know what was in the candy.
Yeah. How would you, so being as you were a young student, in the field of psychology, like what considerations do you think there are for this blend essentially, or this tightrope walk between Eastern and Western medicine? Like, where does traditional psychology, classical psychology, like fall short as we practice it here and now, and where do you think like shamanism can fit into that?
Practice it less.
Practice
What
it less?
we practice now is totally given up. Well, I'll take this drug. When I was in undergraduate school, I did the speed, I did I did acid, I did mellow mushrooms. I did all those things because one, I was an angry warrior who just got discharged from the military.
Yeah.
And two, I wanted to know if they worked. So I am the perfect person you didn't want in your shamanic class. But luckily, I got a shaman offer me cocaine. And that totally tripped me because I was his apprentice. And we taught in the class that the shaman never takes a drug or a drug helper when he's leading or she's leading a group of people in a plant helper ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
I quit that weekend. I wrote him a letter. I told him everything I learned from him that I thought was good. And then on the bottom line, I said, when you offered me cocaine, it invalidated everything you taught.
Because you learned that he had been under the influence while teaching, and that's like one of the pillars of
Why he was doing the ceremony. He was under the influence while he was doing the ceremony.
yeah, while guiding the ceremony.
I had a lot of students under the influence when you're teaching. I was teaching in Brazil, and it was a soccer tournament, was at the height of the point. And I didn't know this because I don't follow soccer. And all of a sudden, when the student jumps up and says, yes, they scored. I thought it was for me.
So yeah, Lisa, do you have any thoughts on like, I guess because now so many of these, I say Eastern, but these more spiritual ways of healing are being pushed into the Western image of healthcare. Like what considerations or I guess concerns would you have as those things continue to blend together?
I've not thought about that before, but what comes up when you mention that is, it's like, what is the intent? And education. I mean, and responsibility. You can know about something, but I believe a spiritual leader has a responsibility to walk their talk, but even more than walk their talk is to know what you're good at and know what you're not. And not just pulling things out of the air and passing them along. So many things that in my own life I've noticed that just accept or say something without really looking at where does that really come from? What does that really mean? We hear it over and over and begin to repeat it, or I've noticed that. So responsibility and knowing that there are many different paths. What might be a healing path for me might be going into yoga. It may be counseling, it may be, but I think it's realizing that there are these different pillars. There's the pillar of healing. There's the pillar of, integration, of personal responsibility, discipline. It's like, for example, in my own case, for years with my own mental health, I had to accept personal responsibility that this pill is not the only thing that's going to help me.
Yeah.
It is one pillar. It is one tool. There's the addressing it from my physical health, my spiritual health, my mental health, my social and community health.
My husband health.
Exactly. My close, intimate relationships. Yeah. So I think it's realizing that it's a tapestry. It's like I can go to all the spiritual workshops I want to go to, but what am I doing day to day with my physical health? Because it does impact my spirituality. So that's what comes up when you mention it.
Yeah.
As far as falling short, I think it's, there's different places for different people. And even if it does fall short, maybe there's a little grain that can come from that, that takes someone to the next step.
Yeah.
I have something I would like to say about that.
Yeah, please.
I believe when I start teaching, it was me. From the first time I start teaching, and I start teaching in rows. You sat in rows and I had a little podium to have my notes on, and I couldn't stand it. I felt so confined. So the next class I taught in a circle, and moved all the chairs out, and that worked. And so my gift is teaching. And just like Doña Lisa said, you know, how many gifts can you have? I've met people with 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 gifts, but when you meet the shaman and you think that shaman has all the gifts, no, it doesn't happen. I've noticed that since we taught together for the last 16 years, it's easier on me because some of her gifts I don't have. And so you look at that, especially in the world today. Back in 1,000 years ago, they had a circle, and the elders sat in the circle real close, and then the rest of the tribe sat around them, and the shaman taught, because that was the shaman's job, was psychology of the tribe, the health of the tribe. The chief made all the other decisions. In fact, the chief made the decision whether that shaman lived or died. And the chief usually had their own shaman, and he died the same day the chief did.
How?
Because when the chief dies, it's written in the word, they have to kill the shaman who was the shaman, because it didn't stop it.
Oh,
that
wow.
shaman had an incentive.
Yeah, he had an incentive to take care of that
But
chief.
to take care of him, yeah, and to keep him alive. Wow. Is that in any-
Anyway, that's just one of those funny things in history.
Yeah, yeah. Is that in any one particular tribe, or is that like a universal?
No,
like,
that's pretty much universal, because I teach universal shamanism. So that's what the tribe usually has a shaman, or could have 5 or 6 shamans, depending on how big the tribe was. And the chief would have one. The chief could have as many as he want, but I've never found in my readings. I get tickled about reading about shamanism back then, because it's nothing like it is today, because the world is nothing like it is back then.
Yeah,
You know, what's real though is the people.
yeah.
We still have our similar struggle. We still have in our mind when we don't feel good about somebody, we want to be polite with them, when it would be better to say, I'm sorry, I have to leave and walk away. All that is based on emotional and feeling. Shamanism is based on your spirit. Where is your spirit? Do you need a drug to have a spirit? Then you don't, your spirit isn't where it's supposed to be. That's how we teach.
Yeah, yeah. What, I guess, considerations are there? Because you mentioned that a lot of shamans are shamans because their mother was, or their grandparents were, and they were born into it. So I guess as people that were not like familially born into it, like what, I guess, considerations for respect are there for somebody who was not born into it, who like wants to learn more? Is that
Well, that depends on the person. It's like, your job. Do you refer them to a neurologist, or do you refer them to a dentist? Where's the pain on this side of his head coming from? That's a out of the pocket decision to do it. And there's a third thing that I hate to admit that's there. I know people that if you don't have enough people for the workshop, you couldn't cancel the workshop. So yeah, this workshop will work for you. Come on. We don't. We have it set that maximum 14 people be in the workshop. That where for the weekend, everybody has an opportunity. Now, if you want to put this back 1,000 years ago, as I said, they had this great big circle. Everything was solved in the circle, and the shaman was the leader of the circle. It says nowhere in history that the shaman was God. Even Don Castanova, even him said that in the beginning. And then the more he started getting into drugs, he started changing it. And you can get like I get. This is what you have to prove. And it's not a pretty picture.
Yeah, I think that's definitely where you talk about an abuse of power, because somebody who's a spiritual guide, just because they're a spiritual guide, they're still human and they're still capable of abusing their power. And something that I've been reading a lot about. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like other kind of psychedelic therapies, but there's a bunch of programs going on now that are like essentially training existing therapists to be like psychedelic integration leaders. And there's just been a lot of accounts of abuses of power in those spaces. I'm not sure exactly. I don't want to say I don't know exactly why, because I mean, abuses of power can happen in any space. And is it because it's unregulated? Is it because the wrong people are getting involved, or there's only a, you know, small amount of people that are involved and therefore not enough people to kind of call them out on it? But between the different therapy programs that I know of, which are by Françoise Borzat, if you've heard of her, she's like, she's French, but she's this like huge figure in the mushroom like therapy community, and MAPS itself, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, they have a training, but it's specifically for MDMA, I think. But and also Timothy Leary's son has a training himself as well.
Yeah.
So
I saw that.
yeah, so I've been interested in seeing like, you know, in those ones that I just said, two of them I've heard of like accounts of things going wrong where people have abused their power, and usually it's because it's usually instances of like a male spiritual guide who becomes a little too close with some of the, you know, females in the circle, and we know that that can happen in any space, you know what I mean? In Western healthcare, that can happen as well, but it's kind of particularly tragic that it's happening in like the early developments of these stages or of these training programs now. So and I'm guessing that you know, abuses of power have probably always existed, but it sounds kind of similar, I guess, to what you're talking about with Castaneda, and you know, how if you take too much of something and you start to rely on that to be the spiritual guide for you, like that's not it. And I think you can also get high off of power, you know, and so yeah. Anything. So busyness, as you said. So
we've worked with people that have been high on buying movie tickets. We've worked with people who have been high on buying clothes and then throwing them out after they work. The addiction has massive role. And then, as you say, people get power. I know a doctor who was a radiologist, and he finally got caught molesting men that came to his practice to have an x-ray. And, you know, I thought of all professions that couldn't get it. The radiologist doesn't have a whole lot of hands-on stuff. Everybody does it for him, and he reads the damn thing.
yeah.
Excuse my French. So any place can be a position of power. Look at what you read about the head coaches in the Olympic Games. How many of them have been brought down by male and female abuse?
Yeah.
So that always, I try to get people to see it. Don't just pick out this one thing. I'm going to tell you about a bunch of them so you're aware when you go out. You know, if I came up to you and talked to you on the street, will you feel comfortable? No, because I lived in Atlanta for 45 years. I know Atlanta. Somebody gets near you, you know something good isn't going to happen, and you move back. That's what we've instilled. We don't respect our politicians because they don't relate to us at all. So you see that whole flower is coming apart and it's not holding together because there's so much out there that's false.
Yeah, truly. Let me look again at these questions. Somebody also wanted to know if you're familiar with mana or house spirits. I'm not really sure exactly what mana is, but I guess
it's a personal name that a person gave to a spirit that lives in your house.
Okay.
And that I don't believe that.
How does that relate to shamanism, or does it?
Oh yeah, you can. We read energy. I read energy from you. When you're talking to me, or it's better when I'm in a room with you. I don't like electronics.
Yeah.
But I can read the energy and I can feel where you are. And these other people want so bad to be somebody. So what is the hardest thing for you to prove? They took the demon out of your house. Well, if you're psyched up about the demon, and you know if the shaman comes and takes the demon out, shaman's a good guy. Psychology. The shaman comes and talks to you and says, now, you gotta be real quiet while I do this now, because this is really deep work. I just want you to sit here and not worry. I don't. I want you to challenge me. She wants you to challenge her. Why is it? Show me how it's doing. Make it work. You make it work. I don't make it work.
Yeah. Yeah, like the LA realtor that sells houses that are spirit free. She's very successful, I hear. So, but yeah.
You know, the same thing, you know, you got Jimmy Carter is doing Habitat for Humanity. He's the only politician I've ever known to do any good after he left office. And you got the rest of them looking out, building up more money for where they are.
Yeah. For who knows what. And
there's your age people are the renegades now. Now you want to get down to the truth. That happened in the 60s.
Mhm.
And so that's what I see this around me. And when I talk to them, they want to make sure that they're not under my control or anything. And I tell them, you can never be under my control unless I point a gun at you. That's why you have to live. You have to live believing in your own strength. It's like you talking to us today. I watch your energy. Sometimes it's in amazement, and other times I got to remember all this stuff.
Yes. And it seems like shamanism is just like a beautiful way to, I guess, unveil each person's own spiritual path. You know, as you said, that can look like yoga, that can look like, you know, anything else, but with shamanism as a way to kind of hold the space so that a small community can come together and individual healing can happen, and then that individual like unfolding of what each person's guide to spirit is, or connection to spirit, or unveiling of spirit within themselves, and just, you know, how they do that and what that looks like. So I've learned so much from you both. Thank you again. I would love to like see more, like learn more from you. I would have had this be in person, but I'm actually in Burlington, Vermont at the moment.
Wow.
Yeah.
You fooled me. I thought it was a sunny land over there.
No, it's actually, there's snow on the ground in Burlington.
Oh, good. No.
Yeah. Yeah, but thank you. I think I got most of the questions that I wanted to ask, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but yeah, thank you again. I'm like, I'll definitely have more questions for you, but yeah, is there anything else that you guys want to, I guess, say or add in about ISS or yourselves, or what's been like anything particularly moving or transforming that you've learned along this path?
What I learned was to accept myself and teach people to do the same thing, and to see it with joy. If I got to accept myself and everything's wrong, I'm not ready to accept myself. I have to do some work. I have to clear some garbage out of my brain. And then slowly, and sometimes I actually have to go back, and I found another piece still there that I have to get rid of. It's never like it's just done. I'm ready. Take me up, son. You know, that doesn't happen. You got to do the work for it, and the pill, the weed, the whatever. It's an abstraction from what you're supposed to do. And what happens is you quit doing it. You're still doing ayahuasca. Oh yeah, I'm getting holy. That is my third ayahuasca trip. I'm about to be Pope. Excuse me, I didn't mean that. That last piece.
You know, I thought about something when we were preparing for this interview today, and like addiction. And it's something I heard a long time ago, and it helped me in my healing, and I hope it can help someone in theirs. There was a pretty famous guy in the 80s, 90s, Wayne Dyer.
Oh yeah.
And he talked about the story of, you know, it's really easy to stop biting your fingernails. You just don't put your fingers in your mouth. And it is simple, but it's not easy. I think that's what he said. It's really simple. But like with our own healing, it's like, I'm here and I want to be here. And it's like this should, have to, ought to, supposed to. And how many times in my own healing that I've fallen. I want to be here, but I fall down again. I don't get it. And I end up in the same spot. And it's not going from point A to B. It's going down there in the deep, dark place and saying, why am I doing this? Why can't I get from here to there? It's looking at the why beneath the what. And in healing, I think we do damage to ourselves by saying, I should, I have to, ought to, I need to. No, it's looking at where am I and why do I keep stumbling? And if I fall in that hole 50 times, as long as I get up 51, I'm going to find my way. And in terms of like edifying whatever spiritual teachers, and I think there can be this mysticism to a shaman, that we put a shaman up on a pedestal. I believe a shaman can be a person in a rehab house that's cleaning up crap all day. A shaman can be, Orion Mountain Dreamer wrote this beautiful poem. It's like, I don't care how much ascension you have. I don't care how many spiritual gifts you have. I want to know, can you stay up all night with me in my pain? Can you be there for another person in their pain? That is a shaman, in my opinion. It's a healer. It's not this woo-woo kind of guru, even though I think there are many gifted shamans. I think there are shamans all around us. And it's healers who make a difference. It's the word, the label. You know, just like we have a label of what someone who's addicted is. You know, no, there's a person underneath that that's facing a lot of pain or has a deep need. And in healing that need, like I said earlier, I can know about addiction, but being in addiction, I have a different view of it. So that's just the only thing I wanted to add. And I want to say thank you. Like Don Thomas said, your generation is a counterculture. And we're seeing how the old ways are crumbling because of enough young people saying, we're not doing that anymore. So the work you're doing, keep going.
Thank you.
Keep going and knowing you make a difference. Even when you might not feel like you do, you make a difference.
Thank you. I love what you just said also. And I just want to say that I feel like my perspective on addiction is very different than most people. So I just like really relate to kind of what you're saying with having it not be a label for someone. Yeah, I'm really into the work of Dr. Carl Hart, if you're familiar with him. And he just is like really, really amazing. And has done a lot of this like uprooting kind of everybody's or I guess kind of like the typical narrative of, you know, one hit, that's it. And like, I think that work is really important. And that's kind of what the space that I want this to bleed into as well. And I think it will, because again, it just is related back to healing. And part of it is healing our own mental ways of looking at something and like the perception of that. And I also really love what you said about the word should. One of my best friends and I actually had a conversation about this like 6 months ago, saying we should just abolish the word should. Let's just get rid of the word should. And it's been like, since having that conversation, it's been so like, I just guess just like liberating to think like, no, it's not that I should go to the gym. Like I want to go to the gym, you know, or I get to go to the gym, or like now is the time to do that. You know what I mean? Because should is just like an ego game. It's just like, your ego wanting you to do or look like something that's
Pretend that
more,
you do.
that's aside from you. So yeah, thank you again so much, Don and Doña. I haven't used those words regularly.
Those are
It might
titles.
take me a second to the title.
My first name is Tom, and
Mhm.
Lisa, you know her first name.
Yes.
So the Don is just title. And I relinquished my title because I'm retired, but she keeps putting it down. So I have to tell you that.
Once a Don, always.
Once a Don, always a Don.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Haley, for your
Thank
time.
you. Thank you so much. We'll talk
And
soon.
if you want to talk again, we'll be glad to talk to you.
Okay. Yay. Okay. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Okay. Bye.